going back to buds, I was in the best shape of my life, like even to this day, because I wasn't getting beat. I was just training at my discretion. And at this point, like I already knew what it took to get through first phase.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast. In the evolution of life, a strong mind will often defeat a strong body. Those that are willing to get up time after time and become unbreakable truly understand the term "until death do us part." That eternal sleep is the only time to lay down for good. A relentless soul is amongst the most frightening weaponry to the adversary and enemy. The only way to win is in the death of the opponent or your own. There is no way around, there is only the way through. There is no time to blink, and there is no time to rest. A victorious warrior knows that a win will come at a cost. Each day will get more and more difficult, knowing that the only easy day was yesterday. So you go through this incredibly difficult week where you're put through absolute hell. You have this chaos going on. You get through it and you think, hey, I made it. But then you get rolled again.
Yeah, that was my mistake, was thinking that, hey, I made it. Because I remember thinking like, oh, hard part's over. And I couldn't have been more wrong. So going into second phase, I woke up the Friday before second phase and I couldn't turn my head left or right. And that was because of those boats I was telling you about bouncing on my head. It had basically, what the docs told me was that whatever's in between my spine, the discs on my spine was gone essentially. And I couldn't move my head. And so I ended up getting rolled into my third class, which is class 266. And what happens when you get rolled is you're just kind of in this limbo until the class behind you catches up to you. So I had 7 weeks or less to rehab, train, rest, recover. And as soon as the class got caught up with me, I jumped in with them, and then on we went. So
you didn't at this point, you didn't have to go through Hell Week again?
No. So there's checkpoints, right? So that first roll I had was the Friday before Hell Week, right? That wasn't a checkpoint. I had to start over from the beginning. Once I got through Hell Week, that was a checkpoint. If I would have, if something would have happened, midweek of Hell Week and up until second phase, then, and where I had to get rolled, then I would just start off there. So if I got rolled the 5th week of buds, I would be considered a brown shirt, because you wear white t-shirts when you're pre-Hell Week, and then you wear brown t-shirts for the rest of buds when you're after you get through Hell Week. So,
but isn't that a great analogy for life?
Oh yeah.
Think about that. I mean, I take lessons from everything. I take a lot of lessons from the military in general. And that lesson of everything's a checkpoint. Well, life is a bunch of checkpoints.
Oh yeah.
You make it through high school, checkpoint.
Right.
You make it through your next phase of life where you're trying to figure out your way in this, checkpoint.
Right.
And you have these series of checkpoints throughout your life where you make it, where you may get a little progress, but you may have to go back,
right.
But you never have to go beyond that checkpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was, I made it to a good checkpoint, but it was my last roll. I had already had my performance roll. I had already had my medical roll. So now I am out of chances, right? Third strike, you're out. And that's what happened. So class 266, dive phase, right? So second phase of buds training. I'm going through it. First couple weeks, I mean, you get beat. You start out day 1 of second phase on the grinder, just like you do in first phase. You're doing PT, you're getting wet, you're getting sandy.
Getting that hose in your face and shit.
All of it, full Benny. But now you're starting to learn. Now they're starting to teach you. So they're teaching you all about diving, teaching you about your tanks and your rebreather and all this stuff. And so you do about 2 weeks of learning, a lot of classroom stuff, but you still have to do your runs, do your swims, do your O course, and all the times become faster. So you have a certain time you got to meet in each phase, and it just gets faster and faster, right? So you're dealing with all this. Me, I was dealing with it coming off of, two first phases, a hell week, and an injury, and still got to perform. And I was passing my swims, I was passing everything. But then the third week, I believe it's the third week of second phase, they have what's called pool week. So
Oh, that's where they try to drown you.
so that's the last day of pool week. So it starts out, they don't try to drown you day one. They teach you how to, ditch your gear, put it back on, then you got to do it at night. So everything we do during the day, we do at night. SEALs operate, over cover of darkness or under cover of darkness, right? So start out day one, you're just taking your tanks off and putting them back on underwater. Then you do it at night. Then you do it with a buddy and you share a respirator, and it just slowly ramps up until you get to the last test at the end of the week, which is pool comp. And you get 4 tries at the test. So you get 2 on Friday, and then if you fail those 2, then you get 2 more on Monday. Well, as it turned out, I failed those 2 on Friday, and that was a long weekend. And what I did not do, my, my mistake was train during that weekend. I just sat in my room and thought about the test and thought about what I had to do. I didn't try to I didn't prepare myself. And they give you the opportunity to prepare yourself by giving you wooden tanks that are they're a mock replica of the twin 80 tanks that you use for the test, but they're wooden, and they've got a respirator on there, and you've got your life vest. They've got it all for you to train, and you can go out on the grinder, do it during the weekend. I didn't do any of that. I just was thinking about this test.
Which might be the worst thing you can do, because
it was the worst thing.
Now the anxiety will get you.
Yeah, I got in my head, and Monday came around, and I flunked it, and they wasted no time, man. I went straight to a board with a couple other guys that failed, and they dropped us from training.
Oh, this thing you wanted your whole life. Now you're dropped. Now you got to go back to the fleet.
Yeah.
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 This is, so I always wondered this, and tell me, is there a certain statistic or a certain threshold that these BUDS instructors have to reach? Like, you have to graduate 20. You have to, or can they graduate nobody?
There have been classes where only a couple people have graduated. There might be a class where, see, I can't say this because I don't know, but I know that there have been very small numbers. And to answer your question, in the past few years, I know they've been getting pressure to get guys through. Okay. But back then, the books and the movies hadn't come out yet,
Nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it.
07, Marcus Luttrell is still behind closed doors. He's not out and talking. Yeah,
my dad actually, when I was in boot camp, sent me a newspaper article of Mikey Mansour getting killed, and that was the only like press or whatever that I had heard from SEALs, like in the papers or on TV or anything ever. And
well, when you were in, no, you weren't in when the Operation Red Wings happened. That was 05, I think.
2008.
That was 2008. So you were in.
Or 2006. 2000s. I'm getting my dates mixed up. Bad frog, man. 2000. I know it was June 28th.
So that's a crazy one, because
I think it was 2006.
So that screws with a lot of people's heads.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was back then they didn't have a quota to meet. Right. They didn't care. It was just like, hey, we don't need you. It's like, all right. So my buddies and I, we had to pack up our sea bag and march across the street to, it's called X Division, and it's where all the quitters and drops go. And I'll tell you what, you've never met a harder bunch of dudes than the guys that just quit BUDS. These guys are walking around like they are SEALs, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I'm like, I watched you cry and ring the bell.
See, to me, that would seem like a walk of shame.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like it was heartbreaking for me when I got dropped, because like we talked about earlier, like you don't appreciate, what you want until you don't have it, and when you're faced with something that you don't want, now you're like, oh my God, like I didn't realize how bad I wanted that. And so I had my moment where I just, broke down, and then I was like, okay, bitch, now what? It's like, what's next? So I went and I talked to the guy that cuts orders, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, what's the fastest way back to Buds? He's like, well, we got this 1-year billet where you go to Guantanamo Bay and you can be a prison guard, and then you can put in your orders and come back. It's like, sold. So myself and about 10 other guys all took those orders, and we all shoved down to Guantanamo Bay. And
this is an important part in your life right now.
oh yeah,
this is a huge part in your life. You just went through arguably some of the hardest training on the planet, and you're asking for seconds. You just ate a shit sandwich, and now you want seconds. You got rolled, you got dropped, and you're still ready to go back. And if that doesn't speak to your character, never meeting you in person, only speaking to you on the phone, and if you told me that right there, even if you never got back to Buds, that would be enough for me to be drawn to you. Like, what's it about your character that makes you this way? And I want some of that. So that's I think, the draw to you. You get rolled, you get dropped, you're at the lowest point of your military career, and you want more. Like, no, I'm not done yet. What are you talking about? I'm not done.
I mean, this is all I ever wanted to do, like, and I'm not even in the game anymore. I mean, I am, but I'm not in the training pipeline to be a SEAL. I'm out in the fleet where a lot of guys get lost in the sauce. Some guys never make it back,
You get comfortable.
Well, some guys get comfortable, but there's guys that wanted to go back that ended up getting orders to another ship or something and ended up not coming back for years later. Like, I was down in Guantanamo Bay for 19 months. They told me 1 year, so I got dropped August 31st, 2007. I didn't get back to Buds until December of 2009.
And you were at Gitmo during a very unpopular time at Gitmo.
Yeah. We had a super cool president in office saying he was going to shut that place down. I'm pretty sure it's still open, though.
Yeah, listen, I watch Bad Boys. It seems to be pretty fortified.
I'll tell you what, if I ever go to prison, send me to Guantanamo Bay, because they got treated like better than we did.
Oh yeah.
It was because there were so many eyes on that place that it was like you couldn't fart without somebody knowing about it, and it was, I mean, that place, it sucked so bad, but it was such a motivator to get back. Like, I already wanted to go back, but being there as a prison guard for terrorists that I signed up to capture, kill, and I knew guys who were SEALs were going and rolling these dudes up and sending them to Gitmo, I mean, that was just like a poke in the eye and just like a kick in the ass to get back, because it's like, dude, I should be the one putting you here.
You got sidelined. You were a starter, and you got sidelined, and now you got to watch the game being played from the sidelines.
Dude, it well said. I mean, I will say this about Gitmo is that the group of guys that went down there, we had a pretty good turnaround rate going back. One of the guys, he actually quit, and he went back, and he was one of the few dudes that made it from start to finish all the way through Buds with no rolls going back. And I think out of maybe 15 of us, like 10 of us made it. But what I will say about Gitmo too is that it was a great place to train. Like, I had Olympic-sized pool to swim in. I had plenty of trails to run.
It's pretty similar in climate too, right?
It's hot as shit.
It's hotter.
Yeah.
So it's actually better for you.
Yeah. I mean, I hate the heat, man. I'd rather be cold. Even though Bud's training sucked because of the cold, like, you can always warm yourself up. Like, cooling down's the hard part. And it was hot down there. But I got plenty of training in. I mean, I was going back to Buds, I was in the best shape of my life. Like, even to this day, because I wasn't getting beat. I was just training at my discretion, and at this point, like, I already knew what it took to get through first phase. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is like the hammer. It's where they crush you. So going back to Buds, like, I was faster, stronger than I'd ever been.
You're like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. That's exactly what you are.
That's probably the best compliment I've ever got.
You're like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. You just keep getting better and better because you know what's going to happen the next day.
But the thing is like, it wasn't easier. Like, I remember going back and, kind of talking to some of the guys who were at Buds when I showed up, who had gotten rolled. And I would like be like, "Oh, you're a rollback? Like, what's it like?" And like, "Well, who the fuck are you?" It's like, "Well, I'm the guy that got dropped a few years ago. What's it like?" He's like, "Oh, it sucks." I was like, "Okay." And it did. It was just as bad. It's like, for the most part, it was a whole new cadre. There was one instructor there who was there when I got dropped, and he was still there, and he remembered me.
Oh no.
So like,
Oh no.
but he was cool because he was my proctor in my second class in 265, and he was cool. And when he saw me, he was like, it was like day one. He's bitching at the class and drop down, blah blah blah. And he walks by me. He goes, "Welcome back, Collins." And I was like, "Oh, sweet." Like,
Well, you had some pretty storied instructors in Buds.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and these guys, especially those first, yeah, I mean, these guys, they're all coming back from hardcore kinetic deployments, like hot Iraq deployments, hot Afghanistan deployments.
That's sort of their like gift for on these hard deployments, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you listen, you go be an instructor for
Yeah.
a little bit and calm down and reacclimate.
Yeah, and most of them didn't want to be instructors. Most of them want to get back in the fight, and I get it. It's like, sometimes you just get burnt out and you got to take a knee and, go be an instructor or whatever. Go.
Well, there was one in particular who I admire the shit out of. I don't know if you want to mention his name or not. Who I love the guy. You told me his name off air, and I won't say it.
Right.
But he's one of those guys who I listen to because I think he's very intelligent and I think he's very well rounded.
Yeah, Eddie Gallagher.
Eddie Gallagher.
He's the man.
Yeah.
He was one of my instructors going back, and he ended up being my platoon LPO. And I can't say enough great things about that dude. And as an instructor, man, he worked us.
See, I had the fortune of my drill in the police academy was Force Recon Marine. All right, so just like Eddie Gallagher, this guy reminds me a lot of him. Smoke like a chimney, but could still run like a sub 5 minute mile. And I'm looking, stay in the lean and rest for days. Yeah. And these are a rare individual, and that's how I saw Eddie Gallagher. It's that reality.
Dude, Eddie's a unit, man. I saw that guy running around with like a horseshoe of Copenhagen in his mouth, just like barking orders. Like once we were in the SEAL teams, and he was my LPO, just like barking orders at guys, and his teeth are all got like Copenhagen in them, and he's just like, he doesn't give a fuck, man. He was hardcore, and you're right, like that's the kind of guy. I looked at him, I'm like, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Like I tried to memorize like everything he did and just watch him, how he moved. But as an instructor, man, he put the screws to us. And
well, he wants you to be as good as he is because you're going to be watching his back. I get it.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, I get why instructors get pissed when they see guys, shitbagging it or shortchanging it, because it's like, yo, I do not want you on my team if you are not pulling your weight. And this is Buds, man. Like, you're not even like carrying all this gear or a machine gun or me
or under active fire in a hostile environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is a method to the madness, and that's what Buds is designed to do. It's like, this is as close as we can get it without shooting at you,
Mm-hmm.